You are, I'm sure, by now well aware, massive tornado struck Oklahoma yesterday. Considered to be, from what I understand, perhaps the biggest and most powerful tornado to hit the United States in our recorded history. 24 people died, including 9 children. The devastation was amazing. The images of this tornado just shocking in many respects. There is a tornado watch. I know we have listeners who listen to the program in North Texas and Central Texas. There is a tornado watch. Stop listening to the program. Tune into your local news and get the word. Please stay safe. There are people who are receiving criticism, I know, on Twitter yesterday for in any way raising the issue of politics at a time like this. But the fact of the matter is the moment that that tornado is gone, the moment that the search and rescue turns to search and recover, the question becomes, who will help these people? And yes, the Red Cross is receiving donations, and yes, there are other places to donate. But the reality is that only the federal government has the capacity to help when you have a catastrophe like this in any meaningful way and in any long-term way to rebuild the lives of these people. And so it necessarily becomes political at that moment. Not small bore politics in terms of who's going to get elected and this and that. We're talking about politics in terms of the way it affects policy. And in the wake of this tornado, you have Oklahoma Senator Tom Coburn says that he will seek aid, federal aid, for victims of this tornado, but only if the cost of this aid is offset by budget cuts somewhere else in our federal government. I guess Tom Coburn needs some measure of respect for maintaining consistency. But consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, particularly when it means that you are going to either provide no aid from Tom Coburn's perspective to these people whose lives have been devastated, or you're going to necessarily hurt other people. That is the policy choice that he is offering. James Inhofe, the other Oklahoma senator who joined Tom Coburn in voting against aid for Hurricane Sandy relief, has told MSNBC that this situation is totally different. That aid was pork-laden. That the aid that he will request or vote for in the case of his own constituents is going to be totally different. There'll be no pork in that. It'll just be to rebuild people's lives. I don't know which one of these senators presents a more despicable attitude. But in both instances, and this is not political, this is simply policy oriented. In both situations, their perspective is completely warped and indicative of a real problem that people with this ideology have when it comes to acknowledging that the federal government has an important role to play in people's lives. not just in their everyday lives, but also in those moments where tragedy strikes. But the fact of the matter is that tragedy strikes Americans, different Americans at all times. Whether they have become bankrupt because of medical bills, whether they have lost a job because their corporation is outsourcing, whether they are being shot by guns, whether they are unable to get medical care because of where they live, they are unable to reach their potential because they are mired in poverty, because their kids and their family doesn't have enough money to feed them. It doesn't happen to every American at all times, but at one time, at any time, I should say, Americans are suffering because of choices not that they made. Whether those disasters are on an epic scale or just simply confined to their own home and their own lives. And these two senators are stuck in an ideology and in a political reality that they have in many respects created for themselves that forces them to ignore that reality. So it's perfectly warranted to disabuse them of that idea and to point out the fallacy of that position. There's nothing else that I can do sitting here in New York, short of donating a couple of dollars to the Red Cross, other than to say that that ideology is demented.